I suffer for my art. Now it's your turn.
Here we are, pretending to be in the same room.
How is Santa Cruz today?
That's good. I'm
Yeah.
dodging people on their phones. It's beautiful day, beautiful environment. Yeah, 90% of the people walking past me are staring at their little screens.
Well, that's the case all the time. It's funny. Everyone says that these devices have made everybody antisocial and everyone is always staring at them. But I saw an old picture from like the 50s of a train going to New York, and every single person had their head in a newspaper.
Yeah,
So I don't,
yeah.
I don't think it's a new phenomenon to want to
No,
avoid people.
no, but they couldn't walk down the street with the newspaper in their face.
Well, they could then fall in a hole.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
So, what you been up to?
usual, just starting to work on your new music a little bit.
Do I look old in these? Am I getting old?
Well, yeah, you're getting old. We're all getting old with every day.
Okay, no.
You didn't put a little
Why are we
makeup?
wasting this moment then? Why aren't we doing
This is the
something
moment.
creative?
This is the
Yeah,
moment. This is it.
yeah,
But, I watched an interesting movie with Deb last weekend. It's called The Iron Claw. And it was, at first, I didn't even want to watch it because it was like a wrestling movie and she picked it. But apparently, it's a true story about this family, this wrestling family, the Von Erichs. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It was like four
yeah.
brothers. Started out as five, one died, and it's a tragic story. But the point of it isn't to be a movie review. The point of it is it brought up some interesting questions that I wanted to ask you. And the underlying premise of this was obviously the brothers all vying for the father's affection and attention, right? He was a very strict disciplinarian. He put a lot of pressure on the boys and they were always trying to please him. And so that's really the story and the tragedies that kind of occur because of that. And
Yeah,
so it brings me to the point, like, you as a young artist, how were your how were your parents? Were they supportive? Was one supportive, one not? Did you have that kind of pressure?
kind of. I've realized over the years that it's all about grabbing attention. And my parents were sad intellectuals, and I don't mean that intellectuals are generally sad, is that for them, they felt that they'd arrived somewhere out of nothing through their intellect. And they were happy where they were, and they thought the way for their kids to go on from that was for us all to go to college and become a vet. In my case, is what I wanted to do when I
A
was
vet.
2 years old.
I mean,
So I
that's a
was stamped
fairly
with,
I think that's a fairly common old school parent thing, right? Like in those days.
yeah, they
You,
wanted
you,
their children to be better than they had it, or whatever, or that they could talk about their children proudly.
did
Um,
they I mean,
my
how did that manifest in your relationship? Did they make that vocal, or was it under the surface, or were they very outspoken about it?
Yeah, they were very underwhelmed by my musical attempts. I
Really?
used to play truant from school just to come home so that I could play the piano when no one was around. And when I was banging out one piece, you have to repeat things a lot. My mum would be, she'd come from the other room and close the door. Oh, do you have to keep playing that so hard? That was my mum. But my dad would be like, that's a nice melody, as he'd be walking across the back of the room or
All right, so your
something.
dad was a little more support.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I know my folks felt the same way that yours did, but they didn't outwardly express it. So they were super supportive, but I know in their private conversations they were like, Jesus, I wish Doug would do something normal. I was a late bloomer too. I didn't really have any success in the music business till my early 30s. I mean, you had your first hit at what age?
20, 1983, 26.
Oh, I thought you were
No,
younger than
earlier than
that.
that, 81. Stand or Fall.
So you were what,
Um,
24?
24.
Oh,
I
so
mean,
for
that's not
whatever.
really young by these days. I mean, some
No, no,
people
no.
are
I
like,
thought you were like I thought you were like 19 when the
well,
first
we were signed and we had singles out, but we weren't
right,
exactly famous embryos. We were
right.
like, we'd been around a little bit, trying and testing,
Well, what
but
was their
just
reaction? What was their reaction when you started to have some success? Did the attitude change?
a little bit. I wanted to rub their nose in it a bit
I
because I came back from
understand
America and
that feeling.
I had a dollar bill, and my dad, some of his family had emigrated to the States, and he was always curious about how I led my life because as I grew older, my relationship with my dad expanded. I found out he was a little bit of a strange cat too, so he had
Oh, gee.
a
Apple
curiosity. So I
fell
came
real
back
far
and
from the tree there.
yeah, I we went for dinner with my soon-to-be second wife, girlfriend, who was pregnant. So I announced that and pulled out a dollar bill and said, "Hey, Dad, this is the first dollar I earned in America." It wasn't, but it was a dollar bill. Just the drama of it. And he was like, "Oh, imagine that, a dollar bill."
I mean,
And
that was
so the
much later
conversation
though. That was after big records and big tours and big success. How did they react as it started to go? Were they still skeptical or did
didn't
they
really
start?
have a relationship with him. I left home at
Oh,
17, and
right,
apart from a short, near bankruptcy return to home at 19, where I had to tail in between my legs, ask for £1,000 to get me out of the shit.
right.
Um, Went back home, but then after that, I left again. They weren't supporting me, and I didn't really have a relationship with them to
Ah,
talk about anything. I just kept my
right.
relationship with my sisters going, and that was about it.
And you
Yeah,
had
it's a
what?
deep, dark story when you look at it. The sort of
Well, it's
family.
it's certainly different than my story, although your success was much greater and much more in the world where mine was way behind the scenes. It's actually too bad. I didn't really know all that about you as long as I've known you, what now, 25 years? Do you think, though, that because of that sort of contentious relationship that it made you a better artist?
I don't. I don't really know. I don't know what an artist is. Somebody who, for me, who can um, sort out their pain in a cathartic way. And that's why we call this "I suffer for my art, and now it's your turn."
Right.
You don't really think you're suffering, but you kind of are in your own morass. You're like,
I wonder if because of that though it pushes a person more to succeed and to work harder for like you mentioned before, sort of the I told you so moment or the look at me now moment, if you know what I mean.
maybe because in the band we were all black sheep. When we finally came together as the unit that everyone knows now,
Right.
we were all kind of disappointments to our parents in certain ways. And we all loved rehearsing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, we had our own rehearsal room.
Right.
We worked our asses off and we did whatever it took to get one person to pay attention, get a gig, make a tape, do recordings, write songs, record them, get them out there. There was a
Right.
lot of industry in trying to get us signed because we kind of
Mm.
knew you get 100 no's, but you only need one yes.
Right.
And so that's where, Rupert Hine and his attention kind of got the ball rolling for us. Um,
When did he
and
get involved actually?
1981,
So
we
like
had
the
demos of, yeah, we had demos of Red Skies, Lost Plains that we'd recorded No, we hadn't. Yeah, we'd done demos of it, and then we put it together on a tape. And his girlfriend picked up the mail from in England, the letter box is in the door. So she picked it up every day, and she would listen and vet the tapes that he got, because he got quite a few tapes for production.
I'm sure.
And apparently, she'd had her name was Jeanette Obstoy. She went on to be a big
Oh,
person in
of
our life.
course. Yeah, yeah.
So she'd had a conversation on the
Secret
phone with a
separation, right?
friend.
Secret
Yeah, and she
separation. Am I
directed
right?
our
Okay.
videos,
Yeah.
early videos. She picked up the tape, picked up the envelope, opened the tape, and inside it was a song called Lost Plains. And
Ah,
according
great
to
song.
her, earlier that day, she'd had a conversation with a friend in Spain, and the conversation has ended. Well, Jeanette, we're all kind of lost planes, really. We're all on
Oh,
this lost flight. And he went off and died in a car
serendipitous.
crash.
I just got chills. Serendipitous. Holy shit. It's funny because think about the way that we met. It's just, it's not as dramatic, but my friend Dan was building a studio for you in Soho. I was doing a lot of remixes at the time. I had a column in Keyboard Magazine, and I wanted him to take one of the magazines to you to show you that I was like legit, and tell you that I wanted to remix One Thing Leads to Another. And just that day, as he approached you, you had the Reach to Beach Masters in your hand, right? Is that the
Yeah,
story?
yeah,
I have that right?
yeah. I
So,
did. I had we transferred everything to ADAT, because we were just starting to wake up to the fact that you couldn't get things remixed in. Nobody had a 2-inch tape machine anymore, and we were talking about putting our storage in a different format. And there
yeah,
you were.
so that's,
Yeah,
again,
uh,
that's one of those moments that if you're paying attention, and that moment sparked what, a 25-year creative career. I mean, we've been in and out of doing things together, but of course, The Returning Son, which I'm really proud of. That's a great record. It was a lot of fun, and that's a whole story for another day, the whole making of
yeah.
that thing. But then even the
I
relationship we
love
have
that.
now, which, during COVID, we started working creatively again, and we haven't stopped. So it's been 4 years of working together a lot on a lot of tracks. I have hard drives full of music um, that you've written and that we've worked on. So that's great. That's
Yeah.
interesting, and I didn't know that about Jeanette. My big regret is when I lived in West Hollywood, Rupert Hine lived on the next block. And I
Oh
knew that
yeah.
because he had this big, beautiful house with these open windows, and I could see his gold records, on his thing. And I regret not knocking on his door and just saying, not a lunatic. I'm a good friend of size, and just getting, being
Yeah.
able to speak to him. And I missed that opportunity. I don't know why. I was,
You
I was
should have.
being
He's
a,
a very approachable. He was a
I was
very,
being a
very
bit of a, I
approachable
was
guy.
being a bit of a pussy. And I kind of hoped that I would run into him like at Earth Cafe or something, because everyone was always,
Yeah.
I lived on Westmount there, and
Yeah.
Earth Cafe was at the corner, and that was like everyone was always there. But
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that was my mistake, because I really would have liked to have met him.
Yeah. He was in his wearing pastel colors, driving convertibles around all LA stage. I used to hook up with him in that Earth Cafe quite often and
Yeah,
talk
I got
about how the record business was changing, and should we make another record. And because we'd moved on at that point, when he was living in West Hollywood, he'd moved on, we'd moved on. We'd started working with Bill Whitman, and
wait
then
when
we did 2 tracks with him on the Ink record, Crucified, and oh, We Don't Own the World, is it? All the Best Things Are Free. Sorry,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. Those 2 songs. So we got the old gang back together again, as it were.
Wait, were you living in
And
LA
then,
then?
no, I was in New York, but I was
Oh, I was going to say,
going
yeah, I
to
don't
LA a
remember.
lot.
Yeah, I don't remember. What year? That would have been
Ink was like,
that would have been before I met you. It was 91. Ink was 91, I think, right?
oh yeah, yeah. But that was the last. recordings we did with Rupert, but when he moved to
Right.
LA, I'd gone burnt through New York and was just a floating radical and living in hotels, bouncing around. There was a period where the band was just changing agent. I mean, we kind of tanked our live career for a while because a lot of babies were born and we couldn't all turn up. It was like herding cats. So
You
we
know, and
started to
it
take,
probably is best because at that time, that was that weird time where like so many bands now from your era are so much in fashion now, but there was that moment where it wasn't in fashion anymore, you know, and
yeah,
but now, I mean, geez, I go to see Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, or you guys, or any number of bands from that era, and it's packed. I mean, the houses are full,
yeah.
and
My vision of the early 90s, mid 90s was in the sewage was bathwater and babies just just swimming around. And and it was
oh
the fact of the matter was that radio suddenly got on this change of format that was led by the whole Seattle grunge movement, and
yeah,
everything had to change. Everything had to change because you got to get in front of the competition and change, change, change. But sometimes certain changes don't have the same longevity. And
well,
80s
for
music
sure.
had the biggest market potential. So their lunchtime radio, their ad spots were really responsive every time they played a song from the 80s.
I remember the first time you came to the studio, I was ridiculously starstruck. You brought the tapes over, and Boris and I did the mix, and Jelly Bean wanted to sign the mix. I think it's a good mix. I think it holds up. I haven't
Yeah.
listened to it just the other day, but then I got a phone call from you, you know, asking if I wanted to just work on some music, and that was a real pivotal moment for me as a young producer to get that kind of validation from an artist that, hey, do you want to, you know, want to come and work on some music? And that's how the Returning Sun was birthed.
Yeah. Well, that's how I
Even
roll. I like,
yeah,
if I like somebody, because music is a very vulnerable, to go into a studio with someone, you're kind of exposing your
boy,
vulnerabilities.
sure is. You're, as
And
you would say,
so,
you're showing your dirty underpants.
yeah, it's like dropping your
Was you?
pants and showing your worst
Yeah,
stains to a person in a very close environment. So
it's
we
true. It's
got,
a very intimate thing, you know, which is, you know, sometimes hard for other people to really understand or grasp, you know, when you're in the throes of a record like that. I mean, you really are exposing things about yourself and insecurities and um
yeah, well, I
you know,
think, we're getting back to that, what makes an artist, whether it's seeking attention and everything else, but there's a skittishness to it and there's a huge
yes.
amount of insecurity. So, whilst you're looking for attention, you're also self loathing and not quite sure whether anything you're doing is any good. Is it any good? And then you've
Oh,
got
I
that other
know.
person that you trust and they go, yeah, this is really good. And then you get confident and it builds. And that's how we got that Returning Sun together.
Yeah.
It kind
I
of
remember the
grew
first
from,
session though was terrifying because it's like, you know, yeah, the remix went well. You liked that. What if we get in a room together and I suck, you know? So,
yeah, that was a tiny
but
room too.
yeah, it was at the Film Center building in New York, Ninth Avenue and 44th Street.
Yeah, I weighed like a hundred.
That wasn't the tiniest room that I had. I had an even smaller room in that same facility before that. At least this one actually had a vocal booth.
Yeah, it was good. I mean,
Um,
it was all we needed.
yeah, and of course, well, you know, there's some people on your fan page sent me a picture of the cover of you and I on EQ magazine.
Oh
So
yeah,
that is the actual studio
yeah.
and the time that we worked together.
Your buddy was building my little studio right on Lafayette Street
And
in New York.
that was a good creative change of atmosphere. You
Yeah,
know, again, things for 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 another day. Some of the things that went on in that room,
we've got to let people get to know us before we
and the
divulge that.
yeah, creative process. But it was a lot of, and I remember Jamie West Orm came in and played some guitars. We had a great
Yeah,
time. I just remember, like, you know, my then girlfriend, I don't think she was my wife, waking me up on the couch and screaming at me, going, "Where have you been?" I'm like, I was at the studio. She was, it's been 2.5 days. So we were deep in it, and
Yeah,
this is before, obviously before cell phones. So you couldn't just get a hold of anyone anytime. They were a
yeah,
little more rare in those days. So that
y-
that was a great experience. And you know what? I listen to that record to this day and I think it really holds up. I think it's a great record.
yeah. It has um, the underlying energy of it it was quite a tumultuous time. I know it wasn't for me in my life. It probably was
Oh,
for you too.
yeah, because of
And
you.
it was like it was that Y2K period going on. There was a lot of partying going on
There
just
was a lot of
downstairs,
everything going on.
madness in New York, and so picking up on that energy was
Yeah. That
huge. And
was that was Sex in the City New York era. You
yeah,
know, it's because it's funny because the New York that you and I loved is really not there anymore. In the same
yeah,
ways. And my wife was watching Sex in the City. I don't remember when recently, and I'm just out of the corner of my eye walking by. I'm like, geez, that's the time frame. That's the New York that you and I were in, the meatpacking district, pastis, and
yeah.
all of those, that great. I mean, it was a really terrific time in New York. It
It
really was.
was. It was.
I miss it a
Sleep.
lot.
Sleep was kind of overrated. That fueled a lot of. It was like bright lights but dark selves
Yeah.
for me, and then kind of it fueled. I mean, I was going through a divorce, and then another crash landing in another weird relationship that led to another
Oh God.
journey off to France, and then bloody 9/11.
Yeah, it was insane. But I think that
Whoa.
those times and that time and place is the reason we've stayed close all these years and have the relationship we have, is because we went through all that together. Uh,
Yeah.
because those are just, I mean, it was a really crazy time in New York.
It was good to have somebody to kind of have a constant. What is it? Siren.
I was
Whilst all those
mostly I was mostly
sirens.
the I was mostly the voice of reason, except for when I wasn't.
You, reason. You're the reason I went through the
compared
mess.
to be fair, compared to you, it's the voice of reason.
Yeah. You're the
But
reason a lot of things happened.
we could talk about that other stuff another time. But again, we'll let people get to know us before we divulge all of that. But that was clearly all you, my friend.
All right. I'll take it. So we're doing stuff now.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
just
bringing
got.
it back
I'm
to the
really
moment we're
excited
doing.
that we're getting started again um, on your project. We're I think we're going to start again. Well, you've already sent me a couple tracks
Yeah,
that I've
I love
started
doing
to
this.
import into Pro Tools. If you want to, tell our friends what you're doing, what
Yeah.
we're
Well,
doing.
it's the sound collection on um, Facebook that really been very accommodating in allowing certain artists to just create music for
Well,
their
that's for sure.
library that people can use free of charge on any of their, whatever they're doing, their little clips or videos or ads or whatever it is. And so for me, what I love about it is it's like to the listener, it's all available. Anyone out there now can get on that Facebook sound collection and just listen to the body of work, not just mine, but there's thousands of songs on there, but mine's worth listening to if you know me.
I
And
can't even. How many have we done since 2020? I have terabytes of Pro Tools sessions of stuff that we've done, vocals and
yeah, I mean
instrumentals. What impresses me a lot is your instrumentals. You have a really interesting. You write things that I would never come up with. Uh,
yeah,
we
maybe it's
really should be.
because
We should be scoring movies.
for me, music was always like my voice was my instrument. And so when you're doing an instrumental, you're kind of singing to yourself
Mm,
quietly. And so that ends up always looking for a theme or something that if you were a singer, you could sing along to or
right.
start, and that follows the thought and the sentiment. So that's how my particular style of instrumental comes about is
Really
just
good. We should
gagging the
put, you know
mouth.
what? We'll put a link to that collection so people can
Yeah.
click on it and check it out. There's some really good stuff. And when you started sending me instrumentals, that's when it was kind of like, oh, I realized just how much of an influence you were. Obviously, you're the voice of the Fix, but I didn't realize how much instrumentally you were really contributing to things, until we started working on the instrumentals. I mean, people see a lead singer and they think,
When we're working, or I've got an idea for a basic song, there's images. And when I'm working with the guys, I start talking in pictures.
hmm,
And so the atmosphere that I feel around a certain lyrical melody comes out, and Rupert will grasp that. And
yeah,
everybody really responds to the pictorial images
right.
of sound. And
They
then they
sure do.
translate it into their own style. But musically, the ins and outs and the kind of where something sits against the vocal or the tonic has
Hmm.
a place. And so they understand that and they interpret my idiosyncrasies really well and have made a
Yeah, they sure
style,
do.
their own styles, obviously. But yeah, a song has many layers. You can just get by with a candle, a piano, and a voice, which I love. But then you
That's
can,
true. A great song, right? A great song is a great song. In fact, I'm doing a video tutorial on a similar thing, for songwriters and who overthink their demos and overproduce them. You don't have to. If it's a great song, it can come across with a piano or an
yeah,
acoustic guitar and a voice.
yeah,
And what's
exactly.
also amazing to me is this is the same lineup. This is the original lineup, and you guys are still together.
Yeah, it's better than a marriage, I can tell you.
I mean, that's almost unheard of. I can't think of another band from your era. If people can think of one, put it in the comments. I can't think of
Yeah,
another group from that era that is all still the same original guys. That's tremendous.
I guess, I mean, it's luck in the end, isn't it? We met, we all
Well, yeah,
get
no one's
on.
died, and but but beyond luck, it's a testament to the fact that you guys are a family, and whatever differences you've had along the way, you've been able to work that out. So many bands, you see so many creative relationships splinter and
Yeah,
never to be reformed again, and that hasn't happened with you guys. That's an
yeah.
accomplishment.
We have a thing that we all have egos, obviously, but
Yeah, of course,
we
you
all
have to.
check them in when we're going into a studio or writing session. There's no ego. It's just the song is the collective thing. So we're all working, and we will have arguments, creative arguments, but it's not based on a personal. And so things grow from that. It's a very creative environment, and that has kept us going. Like it always
Yeah.
leaves us wanting more. At the end of a session, no one's like, oh, "Fuck, this is the last fucking time I work with those
No.
guys." We always like want more and more and more.
And then everyone punches Rupert on their way out the door, and everything is back to normal.
He's such a random. His elbow will knock a button whilst he's searching for something else, and he'll go, "Oh, oh, that sounds
Well,
good."
listen to, look, one of your biggest, probably your biggest song, One Thing Leads to Another, that weird thing. No one had heard that before. And, those of us in cover bands at the time, we were covering, I was in a cover band in Cleveland. We were covering a lot of that stuff. It's like, how the fuck do we get that sound?
Yeah,
Like, we,
squealing pigs in an abattoir.
you know, so it works.
A lot of personality in what he does. He's very
Yeah.
as a personality, and he's talking about the ego. He's not competitive, but he and I have a kind of a competitive relationship because I play piano
I was going to say,
and
because you're
he
probably
plays the
coming in with
keyboards.
ideas kind of sketched out,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
but he's very gracious in the fact that he'll go, "What are you playing there?" And then he'll take it and make it something completely different, but at least it's in the right key.
Yeah. Well, that's
And,
good. That helps.
and he'll take it way beyond what I've thought. But
Right.
when it comes down to the actual playing the piano, it's a different thing. The first thing he said when he came into the audition was, "I don't do chords."
Uh,
And I was like, "No, but you're wearing
so he
them."
probably wasn't wearing a cape.
No, he was, but he did have his jeans tucked into his boots. And a nutshell hat, a leather nutshell hat.
Oh, I'd rather not. Now I'll never get that image out of my head.
Yeah, he's a strong personality.
He's a genius, man. For those of you watching, hopefully there's one or two. This is Cy and I's first podcast. You know, if you like this and you have questions, you put them in the comments. Consider subscribing. We'll read all the comments and address what we can without causing divorces and disownment. We get together and we chat on FaceTime a lot. Real conversations about real things.
Yeah.
All right, Cy. Well, it's very good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
I suffer for my art. Now it's your turn.